And welcome back to Touchline Talk on 110 Sports. It's a beautiful thing. Players wearing United States men's national team jerseys actually competed against other countries on multiple occasions over the past handful of days. So we're going to dive into all of it right now. Yes, these are two meaningless friendlies that we're going to forget about once World Cup qualifying and all of these other upcoming CONCACAF Nations League and the Olympics and all this stuff come up. But I think we learned one important lesson that is going to carry on moving forward. And it's something that was easy to assume would be the case because of the players that are currently involved in this player pool and what they're doing at the club level. But we had not actually seen it take place in a U.S. men's national team setting until these two games. And that is very simply that moving forward, 2022 World Cup, 2026 World Cup, this is going to be a different U.S. national team than any we have seen before because of the creativity across the board and the amount of guys who are comfortable having possession and making things happen on the ball. It's one of the most talked about frustrations with this team is they could not retain possession, didn't have the ability to really break teams down, had to play on the counter and bunker in defensively, and that is just no longer the case. This is a team with an immense amount of confidence about what they can do with the ball at their feet. You saw it from player after player, and that's not even including Christian Pulisic and anybody you might feel can do those kind of things currently in MLS, potentially a Brandon Aronson, for example. You saw it from Weston McKennie on multiple occasions. You saw it from Serginho Dest. Of course, Gio Reyna falls into that category. Yunus Musa falls into that category if he's ultimately going to decide to commit his future to the U.S. men's national team. Tyler Adams to a certain extent. You just never seen the kind of things you saw in these games, and particularly the second one against Panama, with midfielders just running by guys and wanting the ball at their feet. And you saw against the first game against Wales, more specifically, just the general possession. The idea that they're going to play with the ball. They want the ball. They invite the challenge of having to break teams down. Ultimately, they were unsuccessful in doing so against Wales, in large part because they were just disjointed. Because they have never played together before. That was one of the things I talked about coming into this. The final third was just a mess. And that's okay. It was supposed to happen. That's not a concern. When I look at the Wales game, though, that's the explanation for me. In addition to one other thing I'm going to talk about here in a minute. I'm not overly concerned about it. I was much happier and will put more stock in just the idea that Wales really didn't have the ball all that much and didn't do much of anything to trouble Zach Steffen in goal. It was the center backs playing some good passes, and then it was just that midfield coming time and time again. And not only is this a technically gifted midfield, you've got guys who are also CONCACAF ready in there. See McKennie, Weston. There's a level of intensity with him and Tyler Adams, the ability to win and Musa too, to at least to a degree. Ability to win the ball back, willingness to do all that dirty work defensively. Now, McKennie needs to not make the kind of tackle he made against Panama because that's a red if it's a CONCACAF qualifier instead of a friendly. But this is not just a technically gifted team. This is a midfield that is willing to do the dirty work as well, that is kind of emblematic of this U.S. national team of years past. Right, the togetherness, the hard work, the underdog mentality. The difference is now you got game changers out there, and plenty of them, and that's not even including Christian Pulisic. That's the biggest difference moving forward, the most exciting thing. The results haven't been there yet because this group just has not played any meaningful games. But even from those two, you can see this is just different. It looks different. It feels different. There's a different level of confidence with these guys coming in. And that is phenomenal to see. It's just something that has never existed on this team before. Players I was most impressed by. Weston McKennie, who I was not as impressed by as some other people, I think. But there's just no disputing how good he was. He was all over the place. He was beating people off the dribble. Again, doing, like I said, doing all the dirty work. Sometimes he's a little bit too ambitious for my liking. That he doesn't have to be the one creating everything when you have Gio Reyna on the field. And when eventually you would have a Christian Pulisic on the field. But I'll take that at the price of that being coming from a place of confidence. He is feeling very good about himself right now, and rightfully so. And it clearly showed, and I'll take that. If the price we have to pay is a little bit of ill-advised trickery sometimes and being a little bit too ambitious, that's fine if it means we're going to get the Weston McKennie that's running by people, putting on skill displays. He's a traditional U.S. midfielder, but then also has that technical ability that many guys who have played in his position before just don't. And he's got the ability to get on the end of a cross to score goals. He's becoming much better tactically because of having to work in an Andrea Pirlo system. He looked really good. There's no disputing that. I was frustrated at times with him, but overall, two really, really good performances. The player I was probably most impressed by was Serginho Dest. It was better against Wales than against Panama. I think it's clear he's more comfortable on the right, which is something for Greg Berhalter to take into consideration. But I like Reggie Cannon more than Anthony Robinson, so you've got a dilemma there. But his ability to combine, his ability to make things happen moving forward, going up the field, joining the attack, overlapping runs, I was incredibly impressed. And you saw good flashes, specifically in El Clasico. He got a lot of praise for what he did in that loss. But when you're playing at Ajax, it's just, you don't get that publicity week in and week out in terms of what you actually look like as a player. So this was a good opportunity to see him in this team with this kind of talent around him and what he looks like in a U.S. men's national team setting. Because you know what you're getting from a McKennie who was playing in the Bundesliga every week, or a Tyler Adams who played in MLS and is now playing in the Bundesliga. Dest is just starting to come into those major 5 leagues, obviously at Barcelona. I was incredibly impressed. I've always been just a little bit skeptical of him, I guess, not because I didn't think he was good, but he kind of came onto the scene really quickly, and ultimately you just want to see these guys that are 18, 19 prove themselves at the highest level. And he's absolutely doing that. I'm completely sold now. But I was really, really liked what I saw from him. And then the other player, to a lesser degree, didn't get that many minutes on the field, but I wanted to give a shout out to was Johnny. Thought he was really good as your holding midfielder, guy who's going to break play up, get things going the other way. I think he has next to no chance of getting onto a U.S. qualifier team right now when the World Cup qualifiers start, because that's a midfield 3 that Greg Berhalter loves, and rightfully so, if Musa ends up committing to the U.S., and that's not even including a Michael Bradley. But moving forward as a guy in the equation, I thought he looked really good as well. And so now our bigger takeaways. Greg Berhalter, please never, ever, ever again play a false 9. Yeah. Apparently the explanation was he didn't think that the 2 strikers he had were ready. Just throw one of them out there. It's a friendly against Wales B team. And then they scored a combined 4 goals in game 2. But the player this impacted more than anybody else was Gio Reyna. Gio Reyna looked lost because I think Sebastian Lletget was taking up some of that space. He's not thinking like a striker because he's not a striker. You bring in Nicolas Gioacchini thinking like a striker, making those runs to stretch the defense, playing at the very edge of the defense, making those runs in the box, and all of a sudden there's this open space that Gio Reyna lives in at Borussia Dortmund that's available to him, and he looked exponentially better in game 2. It's not rocket science to figure out why. And this is not going to be a major concern moving forward because whether it's Gyasi Zardes, Josie Altidore, Jeremy Abobasi, Daryl DK, somebody's going to, a true out-and-out number 9 is going to start. But this illustrated just how important that is. The only way that Gio Reyna is going to be effective playing on the wing in a 4-3-3 is if he has the ability to tuck inside. That's the space he loves to operate in. All of his best moments from that Panama game came because he came inside. And that space was opened up for him because Gioacchini was being very aggressive and doing his job as a number 9. It doesn't have to be anybody special. Now, Gioacchini was really good. Sebastian Soto was good when he came in too. But these are ultimately guys playing in the second tier in not the best leagues in the world. They're not anything particularly special. They're young, they've got promise, they're going to have very good careers. But that's just how much of a difference having a true striker out there makes. And also, I want to give credit to Gio Reyna for not trying to do too much with that free kick that he scored his first goal on. It would have been very easy to think about trying to bed that over the wall. But when you're that close, it's so difficult to do. I thought he made a really smart decision of just saying, I'm not going to try for the spectacular. I'm going to hope that he's cheating, and I'm just going to make him make a save. I'm going to put it low, I'm going to put it hard, and I'm going to put it in the corner, where I have a better chance of being able to execute that than trying to get it up and down from that close in. Really impressed with that. Again, he looks so much better. It's just more natural, more confident. So now you've got this situation where if you're playing both him and Pulisic on the wing, you've got to be able to let them cut inside. That's where they live. That's what they do. That is one important thing I think we learned just from a organizational, tactical standpoint. It doesn't matter who the players are in there. To get the best out of those two players, the two most important players on this U.S. team, they have got to be able to cut inside, to take up that space, or one of them has to play as a more traditional number 10. Which gets into this midfield, because if Musa is a U.S. national team player moving forward, I'm not sure that Gio Reyna and Christian Pulisic are going to be playing, either of them is going to be playing as a 10. Greg Berhalter really likes this midfield, and I concur. There's very good reason for that. They are really well balanced. You've got this nice combination of the space that Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie covered, the technical ability of Musa and McKennie, the ability to hold on to the ball. It just worked. And good for Greg Berhalter for not getting bullied by these guys' club coaches and saying, I have never seen these players play together before because Yunus Musa has never been in a U.S. national team camp before. So this is my one opportunity. I'm going to play these guys as much as I want to play these guys because I need to see them. They need to play together. I was very happy to see him hold his ground because I assumed that all of those guys, Reyna, McKennie, Dest, Adams, Musa, were all going to be done after. Maybe they come on as subs. I thought there was no way they were starting game 2 because all the clubs were going to be asking for their minutes to be restricted so they don't get hurt. But Berhalter said, no, this is my time. I'm very impressed with that. Good for you, Greg. And the other thing here that we didn't really learn too much about is the center back position. On the outside backs, my belief was still that the best two are Dest and then Cannon. What we saw confirms that even more for me. The center backs were not tested enough against Wales to warrant anything. They were fine. There's just not much to take away there because they just kind of got to do what they wanted and didn't have a lot of pressure. But you saw a couple bad moments against Panama. That first goal, Reggie Cannon needs to go close that down better, but also they just split right through those center backs. And then, again, another great moment on the second goal as well. Putting Matt Miazga out there twice, I didn't love. I would have liked to see Chris Richards get that start. I don't think Miazga is going to be a starter for this team. I'm putting him as my fourth center back right now. Maybe even fifth. Brooks is one. I've said that even before. If he's healthy, he's got a starting spot. And then I'm looking at the MLS guys. I'm looking at Aaron Long. I'm looking at Walker Zimmerman and Chris Richards. Before I'm looking at Miazga. And maybe Tim Ream. I was impressed with Tim Ream's passing, to be fair. I like those MLS guys. And Brooks is going to have one of those spots, undoubtedly. So I would have liked to see Richards get a run because I think there's a real argument he deserves to start in qualifiers and have an opportunity to win that spot moving into the World Cup. So it was not a great showing in Game 2 from Ream and Miazga. It didn't change how I felt about anything because I wasn't in love with either of them anyway. I don't have an issue with them playing instead of John Brooks and resting Brooks to appease Wolfsburg. That's fine. I just would have wanted Richards to start once. But ultimately, I just don't think we learned that much in that position. Nobody really impressed and made you say that might change how I feel about things moving forward. The second spot's up for grabs. The first one is Brooks. That's how it's been. That's how it's going to be. And finally, the other thing I just wanted to mention, it was nice to see this team be tested from a mental standpoint and give up that goal against the run of play early on against Panama. I will continue to believe that the mental aspect of sports is one of the most underappreciated parts of it. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter, but that's a group that's incredibly confident and believes in themselves. Quite frankly, it would have been embarrassing if they couldn't have beaten this Panama team. Because of the team that Panama put out there. These were not good teams that they played. Wales was resting players for their more important Nations League games that we're going to get to in a minute, explaining exactly why Gareth Bale was watching the Masters instead of playing in that game. But both times, immediate responses. You score 3 goals in 8 minutes or whatever it was, to go from, this could be really kind of embarrassing, to these dudes are about to run them off the field. And then you give up a second goal that's just kind of embarrassing, at least frustrating. And all of a sudden, here come the subs. Here comes Sebastian Soto, Richie Ledesma to score, to contribute to 3 more goals. Sebastian Lecce gets the third one, Soto with a brace. And all of a sudden, it's 6-2. Just the response after both goals was phenomenal. I was really happy to see that. And ultimately, the other thing I wanted to mention, going back to the striker position, to illustrate just how simple or important, I guess is the word I should use, it is to just have somebody out there. I mean, that was a really bad penalty by Gioacchini. Don't have a problem with it taking it. He was trying to get his hat trick. That's fine. But again, look at how much better Gio Reyna looked. And that was who was playing striker, with all due respect to Gioacchini. And he was good overall. But he is nowhere near the best striker in this talent pool. They were just the guys that were available because you couldn't get Sargent, and all your other guys are in MLS. And it still made that much of a difference. That was the most frustrating part. The two things that frustrated me, I guess we'll end with this. Because there was so much good, and my biggest takeaway, as I said at the very beginning, is that this is just different. Looks different, feels different, this team is different. In a very good way. I was incredibly frustrated to not put a striker out there because it just put Gio Reyna in a bad position to ask him to play wide with no space. And I was frustrated that Chris Richards didn't get a start. Ultimately, not the end of the world, not a big deal. Life goes on. There's going to be a striker out there. And some of this also probably comes down to whether Musa is going to be a part of this team moving forward or not. Because if you lose him to England, then maybe it's you put Reyna as the 10 with McKinney and Adams behind him and Pulisic on one wing and Jordan Morris on the other or something. But at the end of the day, incredibly, incredibly promising. It was fun to just see this team. That talent is for real. Everybody has been desperate to see these guys in action together, and that's why. It's not just hope for the sake of being hopeful and thinking things are going to get better after Trinidad and Tobago. This team is exponentially more talented. There's not a spot for Michael Bradley in that 11 right now. At least I don't see one. Particularly, again, if Musa ends up playing with this team moving forward. And he seems to be having a lot of fun. This is just a fun group that genuinely like each other. That is the start of something special. Now the question is whether you can get the MLS portion of this and get those guys integrated seamlessly, because that was the difference between this group and the ultimate team is going to be the depth. You got a lot of guys who are going to start that played big minutes at just about every position, from Stefan all the way up to Reyna. But aside from your strikers, right, you had, and then you're going to throw Pulisic and maybe Sargent in there. But the difference is, Richie Ledesma's not going to be on this World Cup qualifying team. Johnny's not going to be on this World Cup qualifying team. The depth is going to be your Michael Bradleys, your Altidores, your Walker Zimmermans, Aaron Longs, Sebastian Legit's, Jordan Morris's. So can you put all these pieces together? But ultimately, very exciting stuff. My apologies there. Ultimately, very exciting stuff. If you're Greg Berhalter, you got to feel really, really good about the ability to get that team on the field and what they looked like.